So I watched Chappell Roan's speech. Actually, I didn't watch the speech. It just showed up in my Facebook feed this morning. I mean, truth be told, I don't watch the Grammys. It kind of bores me, but I think that's okay because I'm really not their target audience anyways. But nonetheless, I watched Chappell's speech where she kind of pointed the finger at the label saying that, they're the bad guy. I think that's kind of an easy target though. It made me think, once upon a time, I think you could point to the labels and go, those guys right there. But I think today it's much more complicated when you talk about musicians getting a living wage. Probably isn't the right term, in my opinion, for musicians either. It's just having them be properly compensated for the art. And art's the key word here. Because I'd say over the last 20 years, we've absolutely devalued music as an art form. Think about it. We no longer buy music. You pay for access to music. So that means the value, the worth, is no longer attached to the music. It's tied to the access to the music. So if you want to point a finger at the bad guy, I think what you need to do is actually look in the mirror. I hate to say it, but we as music consumers, we're the bad guy. And very few people ever want to talk about it. We'd rather point to the industry, we point to Spotify, we point to the labels. And yes, they are all complicit in this problem. But at the end of the day, all they're doing is behaving in service of the end user, the one that's actually got the pocketbook, the one that's spending the money. And that's us. That's you and me. I don't see it getting better. The current younger generation, their focus is on accessing music. They really don't build the relationships that the older generation is doing. And what I mean by that is I've got two daughters, both in their 20s. One daughter has a history of buying physical albums. The other one, I don't think she owns a physical album. All she's ever done is stream. And the daughter who owns the album, even a couple years after she bought it, she'll still talk about those artists. You'll still hear them come up in conversation. My other daughter, who pretty much exclusively streams, she never talks about the artists that she loved 5 years ago, 3 years ago. It's kind of like whatever artist is top of the pile is where her interest lies. So that just tells me that there's just not a deep relationship anymore for somebody who streams as opposed to somebody that actually owns the music. That's the key word, owns. Once upon a time, the relationship between the fan and the music was different. You spent money to either own the physical album, you spent money on a magazine so that you could read the articles, you spent money on the concert tickets and the merch, etc. Today, the expectation is that the music is accessible. You don't go buy a new album, you just assume that album's going to be available because of your subscription service to something like Spotify, or you accept advertisement to go to YouTube or some other platform to access the music. It's just an assumption. It's an entitlement. Music's an entitlement now. It has no value to the consumer. So for Chappell Roan to sit back and say, the label's the bad guy. The labels are just trying to figure out how to spend their money or how to make money as well. In fact, all the data is now showing that streaming as a revenue source is beginning to level off. So a lot of the labels have been making adjustments over the last year or two, laying people off, like people in the promotions and the marketing department, because they're trying to figure out where that new revenue stream is going to come from, since streaming is leveling off. The problem here is that we've already trained the consumers to accept that music does not have the value. It's the subscription that has the value. So I'm not sure where that new revenue stream is going to come from, but nonetheless, when I saw Chappell's speech, it's one of those things that's kind of like, that's cliche. It's easy to point at the label and say it's the bad guy. I think the harder conversation is to look in the mirror and to say, how am I contributing to this problem? When was the last time you bought some music? And I'm not talking about going to a record store and buying a pre-owned album, because none of that money makes its way back to the artist. I'm talking about new music, whether it's from a new artist or an iconic artist. The younger generation, we can't expect them to solve this problem because they're as much a part of the problem as we are. We, as the older generation, you could say that, we got to experience music in a different format, but we're so drunk on nostalgia. We love to listen to the classic hits that we grew up with. We rarely will go out there and buy a new album from a new artist. And when a band does put out a new album, one of the first things we might do is actually go look at the lineup and see who's in the band, and then we question the legitimacy of it. So I don't know how the problem gets fixed. It seems like every generation that's involved with music right now as a consumer, we've got some bad habits, and the result of it is going to be music's going to continue to be devalued. So I don't think we should point at the label and say, bad guy. Once again, I think we need to look in the mirror and say, how are we contributing to it, and how are we going to fix it?